Hello, welcome back to my Crazy Uncle Dave's podcast. I'm your Uncle Dave, and today is International Women's Day, so we have a special episode. I have two of my good friends, Gráinne Dunne, who runs her own company of virtual assistants and social media marketing, and Claire Marshall, who is a fractional CMO and runs her own company. Both have young kids, and we have a really, really good conversation about women in working and how society views women or parents who stay at home to raise the kids as opposed to going back to work, and some of the challenges around that. So look forward to the episode. But I did just want to jump in at the beginning and say we recorded at a Club Quantum, which is in Tunbridge Wells, which we all love, and we do co-working there once a week. And normally it's a quiet environment. However, of course, the day that we wanted to go and record, there was a group of 5 or 6 guys that were making tons and tons of noise in the background, and it played havoc with the audio. So I just want to warn everybody that the audio is not studio quality in this episode, and I apologize for that. But hopefully you'll be able to see your way through that and listen, because I think it was a fascinating conversation and we had a good time and lots of laughs. So stick with us, and we'll see you next time. Hello, welcome back to my Crazy Uncle Dave's podcast. Today we have a special for International Women's Day, and I have a couple of friends here who want to rant with me about women in working and taking care of kids, and how we manage that process. And I really wanted to bring up my rant on it is just based on my personal experience with my wife and some of her friends and the feedback that she's had and that we've seen. I think Claire is with us and Gráinne is with us as well. And I think both of them have some maybe different views on that, which will be good to get a different perspective on things. And I think we'll just get started. So setting out the stall in the beginning, my position is that I think women who stay at home, make the decision to stay at home to take care of kids. And I've also been corrected a few times that it should be people instead of just women. But I think traditionally it's been women who've stayed home. And I think I want to kind of keep the discussion, but I suspect that it's probably even worse for men. That if a man stays home now, that somehow he's like emasculated because he stays home with the kids, which shouldn't be the thing at all. And it really isn't, because again, it is a job. But so I suspect it may be worse even for men.
And it's
these days.
Sometimes the women are the breadwinner.
Exactly. Now it's again, today that's much more the case than it used to be. Even 20 years ago. So yeah, that's a whole nother wrinkle to the conversation. But anyway, that's kind of that's the setting on our stall. That's kind of the topic of the discussion. And we were talking just a few minutes ago, actually, we were talking about the fact that, there are a lot of government programs and stuff like that make it cheaper and more affordable for people to go back to work. Let's start this over. So my position is that when my wife and I had our first son, this was 18 years ago, so put that in the context of the time frame as well. But she was working full time, working on a finance team, getting paid for her sort of point in her career and what she was doing in the job that she had. She's getting London wages, and so we were making a decent amount of money. I had a job as well, but we still had to make a decision about whether she went back to work or we were going to put Aiden in childcare, or was she going to stay at home and be a stay-at-home mom and raise him? And so she was of two minds. She was kind of like, well, I can kind of do either. So we sat down and just ran all the numbers. And at that time, when we ran all the numbers, we were actually 200 pounds better off if she stayed home than if she went back to work. Because once you factored in the cost of commuting and everything else and lunches and like all the other stuff on top of the childcare that went with that. And this was in West London, so we're in Richmond. So, to put it into sort of a context of where we were as well, just for price. And for people out there who don't know anything about that, that's sort of an upper middle class kind of neighborhood in London. So it's pretty expensive. But what was interesting is sort of once her sort of maternity leave and everything was over, right? So everybody takes that. You've got your maternity leave. which in the UK and in Europe is amazing compared to the US, because the US you get like, what, 6 weeks or something, and that's it.
Yeah.
And you're expected to be back at work.
Mm.
But over here, you know, she had basically a year maternity leave and then decided to stay home after that. And it was just really interesting because she started getting little comments and kind of, she noticed that some of her friends who went back to work were kind of treating her differently than they were before, particularly in the mums group, right? So you have the prenatal group or whatever, the antenatal prenatal group.
Yeah.
And some of the women in there who decided to go back to work, I don't know what it was, but it kind of felt like they were looking down on her because she chose not to go back to work. And so this is my rant, because I think it's important, if you can, I think it's important to be able to stay at home and spend the time with the kids. But I also understand wanting to stay working and to stay involved because you want to progress your career. Because the flip side of that is that once, you know, our son was kind of old enough to take care of himself, basically, and my wife wanted to go back to work. And I don't think she'll mind me saying this. She kind of lost her confidence with working because she'd been out of the workforce for so long.
That definitely happens, for sure.
And things had moved on so much that she really was worried and almost felt like she was starting from scratch when she really wasn't. And she has a very, you know, she has knowledge in accounting and finance and things like that, which hasn't changed ever. And so she literally could go right back into a job. She didn't have the confidence. And so that's kind of the framework that I'm coming from.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you've experienced the same thing, or do you, you know, have people who stayed at home? Do they look at you differently, or do you...
Something a bit controversial to say that you're going to say, oh yeah. I know Claire's going to be like, no. I stayed at home with my boy for the first 2 years, and he was my first son, and I looked at the maths and it wasn't mathing. It wasn't worth it emotionally for me.
Yeah.
I would have been better off because there are a lot of schemes now that help with the childcare, but the £700 I would have been better off by wasn't enough for me to want to, you know, leave my baby boy at the time.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of friends that went back to work, and this is where you're going to say no. I felt, honestly, my position was that some of the mums that went back, especially the ones that went back after 6 months, were telling me that I was doing less because secretly they were jealous that they weren't able to have that time. Because financially for me, it wasn't that my husband earned so much money that we didn't have to go back to work. But I think for some of them, they did feel stuck financially because they were the breadwinner. So, for instance, one of my friends, they're both earning well. She was earning a bit better than him on paper, that is, at least. And they had a huge mortgage. So she didn't have the choice of not going back to work. She had to go back at 6 months.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, there was a little bit of rhetoric that was like, you know, oh, you know, well, you're, you know, it's easy, it's all right for you, you know, you're still on basically maternity leave, perpetual maternity leave, they would say.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, actually, this is bloody hard work. And, you know, these babies are really full on. And, you know, I've changed like 8 nappies today, you know, like, how do you feel? Like, you've been at work, sitting, chilling at your office, like having a cup of coffee with real adults. And I think for me, I do think in that early stages, at least, some of that does come from the desire that they would have, especially in those early months, they felt pressured to go back. So they kind of diminish you still being with them as a way of sort of feeling like, you know, this was my choice.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's everybody's choice, especially not at 6 months or 8 months. Yeah. I think when they get to like 2, you are desperate. You are so desperate to leave those children.
And actually, maybe I can just touch on the on choice. I think it's probably that's all about that. So for you guys, it's a choice that you made financially, and I think what we're doing here is exploring the option of going back to work or staying at home. And I think we're in a privileged time now where that isn't the only choice, and there's loads of options behind it. And actually, where we've both got to, and so many other, and it does tend to be more women that have to make that choice, is, well, how can I progress myself, and not necessarily in a career, but in a business, in a way that intellectually challenges me, in a way that I can still be present for my family, for my child, and bring in whatever needs to be brought in. And those options are there. And it can be with exploring conversations with an employer around flexible working. It can also be about thinking, what skills can I take to be self-employed or run a business? So I think I feel that there's not enough conversations around actually that there isn't a black or white, stay at home or go back to work, but actually what are all of the other options that are out there that aren't being explored? And that's what riles me, that I don't think that choice has to be made. And I, like you, made that choice. I was on maternity leave when Jack was 4 months old. I made up my mind I was not going back to work. I was not going to go and do the 9 to 5, the commuting. I actually saw, as I was looking at a nursery, there was a parent that just dropped off and was like legging it to the train station. We were in London at the time, actually close to Barnes. We were in Mortlake, and I just saw that and I thought, I don't want that pressure. I don't want to have to literally chuck my baby over the wall so that I can make the train.
And then you're rushing and racing.
Exactly.
What if you're stuck in London and you've got to pick them up because they banged their head, which happens, some other person is running with them to an ambulance? It would just panic me.
Exactly.
A lot of the saying that I thought, no, I can't.
No. So that image is just it's just always stayed with me, because that's the moment where I was like, I'm not gonna do that. I already had things brewing because I'd qualified in hypnotherapy and I was doing it on the side, but that for me was like, no. So at 4 months old, I then started to sleep quite a bit at that time. And luckily he was asleep. I started kind of working with what that was going to look like. And eventually I did explore conversations with going back part-time. That wasn't really an option with the role that I had. So that cemented it for me. And I haven't looked back since. And it's a whole different podcast, the challenges that have come with that on every level. But that option is there. And 7.5 years later, that flexibility is there, where I can, especially when they then go to school and it's the school plays or the pickup or they're ill because they're hanging their head. That flexibility is there, and I can be there for him whenever he needs me. But I'm also pursuing something that helps me to grow. And I think personally, and it's a personal decision, makes me a better parent to him, because I'm working on something that inspires me every day as well as him. So choices are so important. And to your point about, I've seen both sides of it. I've definitely seen some of the they don't work and some kind of judgment around it. I've also seen pockets of some of the mums that don't work being judgmental over the mums that do choose to go back. It's like, you don't even love your child. How can you do that? Or you're missing out on all these years. It feels acceptable to almost say, but you're missing out on all these years. And it's like, well, actually, you don't know what's behind those choices. And
trust me, they're still there.
And I'm pretty certain there are very, very few mothers and fathers that go to work 9 to 5 and don't get home till late that don't feel a loss of the time they're missing. So I think I've seen both sides of it. And I think society needs to just let people make their choices and stop judging.
Yeah.
But this is the basis, right? It's people being judgy.
Yeah.
And this is the core of what I'm getting to, right? And what you've rightfully pointed out is people are judgy both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give a perfect example. So this is my second marriage. So with my first wife, we had twins. And so there's a mothers of multiples, right, group. And so you go...
Basically, I'm crap because I've only had one at a time. And they're super mums.
Exactly. So the mothers of multiples. So you go along to the mothers of multiples, right? And we went to the sort of the very first meeting. And then somebody it's like, oh, hey, nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. And then somebody sort of came over a little bit and they were like, oh, so was it like IVF or was it natural or whatever? We were like, no, it was natural and da-da-da. And they were like, oh, okay, that's amazing. That's really good, blah, blah, blah. You should come and talk to... And what it was the snobbery within the multiples group of whether it was natural multiples or was IVF. And so basically...
So much snobbery in parenting anyway.
Yeah. And we had no idea. And so the people were like...
Were you elite?
Yeah, we were elite because they were natural.
Oh,
right?
So you were the...
Yeah. Because they're like actual twins. As opposed to you went to a lab and got twins. That was amazing. Even within the group. And that was the snobbery within the group. And it was, we were just like, it's fucking hilarious. We were just laughing and believing, going, this is just like so funny. But that's what happens, right? Like that's people and that's humans. But the thing that I think maybe it is just the judginess, the blatant judginess of it either way.
Because there isn't a right or wrong. It's
Not-
the way I see it is, as long as a couple and that couple could look however couples may look, when they choose to have a child, have a conversation around how is this going to work? How can we both be involved in the best upbringing for our child or children?
Yeah.
So that they have the best, so that we have the best as a couple, because that's often where things can go wrong, because that coupleness gets overlooked, and also as individuals. And I just, maybe I belong in Disney World, but I think that there is always a way around it. And
Well, I'm traditional. So I think that I personally, and I don't care what anyone else does. I literally don't care. I'm not making judgments on anyone, but in my thing, I think it's better if someone, either parent, can stay home with the kid. For me, that's the ideal, I think, because then
Would you want to be that parent?
I wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I don't think my husband could hack it, honestly, and I think you would admit that. I think it's absolutely exhausting, and it's
really hard. And it's also how long for, because there's a point at which actually is that a perspective is there a point at which that's not the best for the child, because is it good for them to be going to a setting where they socialise with other kids and play with kids their own age, as opposed to being at home with mum and dad until they're 5? Again, no judgment.
But if everybody is that way, then you've got the parent that's at home and they're taking the kids out, they're going to the park, they're playing, they're socializing with other kids as well already anyway. So there's other ways that you can do that.
Yeah.
Because that's how it was for ages. And I think one of the things you're getting to, and I know you want to say something, Gráinne, so I'll let you in a second, is
a different bit.
Yeah. But what's interesting today, in particular now in 2025, is that the whole working from home option and all of that has come in, whereas 18 years ago, no one did that.
Although
no one did that.
I know people, I've heard say like, "Oh, yeah," I was having a conversation recently with somebody, I can't remember who it was, and it's like, "Oh yeah, my husband said he could work from home with the baby when it's born." And it's like that might work. It's just a really good sleeper for a few months. There's going to come a point where that's not going to work.
Yeah.
No.
But does it help with being able to make the school pickups or the nursery pickups, or just generally just do a few things? I think it's vastly different to what it was even at the point. And I was very lucky I did work with a boy that actually had flexible working anyway. But that was quite rare at the time. Yeah. And that's we're really talking 7 years ago. So I think it's a huge advantage there.
But the staying home is a job. And that's I think the other thing is that people don't see it as a job in itself, because you're the managing director of the home.
I agree. You're hugely undervalued.
It's hugely undervalued. And not only was it more financially beneficial for my wife to stay home, but she freaking ran it like a business. And which was amazing. And she works in finance anyway, so she's quite kind of, she always likes to be on top of the bills, and she's always looking at like which credit card should we have because it's got the lowest rate, and can we switch it to, so she's always doing that kind of stuff anyway. But she was like, right, I'm the FD of our family, Team Brown, and I'm gonna run it like a business. And so she was always looking for the lowest utility bills, and where could we get the lowest gas prices, and where was the cheapest meat, and all that sort of stuff. And so because she had a little more time to focus on those things, but she viewed it like a job. And she's like, this is the value that I'm bringing to Team Brown, is that I'm sort of paying my way.
But this is exactly what we were talking about before with the finance dynamic, because this is really important part of it. Because for me, I know we've spoken about it before, and it's about how you're dividing your finances, and especially in that time. And a lot of couples, you have your own money, your own life, and then you have children, and things have to change. And, me and my husband, we had a joint bank account that had all our bills and our mortgage and all of that coming out of it. And we used to both put money into it. And then when I was going to have a baby, it was like, well, I can't put money in it. I don't have any money. And he had to sort of give me some money to live on. And for me, this is what I just couldn't really handle for a long period of time, because he would have given me whatever I wanted, but he still had a finite resource. And I like the finer things in life. I want to be able to spend my money on the things I want to spend my money on. I didn't like that I would have to say to him, hey, look, I'm going to go out for a brunch with the girls on Saturday and I'm going to blow £100 of your money. Is that all right? You know, I didn't want to have to do that.
Independence.
And it did stifle me. It made me feel like every time I wanted my nails done, I was having to ask for money. Every time I wanted my hair done, I was having to ask for money.
What's interesting is that you felt that way, yet you weren't valuing that the reason you were having to go for that brunch and ask for that £100 is because you weren't working, but what you were doing.
Yeah, it was my wages. I wanted my wages.
And you were basically raising your child.
Yeah.
But yet somewhere ingrained is still, even though I'm doing all of that, I'm asking you for money as opposed to thinking, going back to your point, that it was a team approach. And I think it's really hard to get into that mindset of, yes, you are financially paying for everything, but why is that money that you're bringing in any way more valuable than what I'm doing?
Yeah.
In terms
And
of
he never bought it. You know, it was so me. I'd say, oh, can I have this? I'd say to him, I'm just feeling really ill in myself. You know, I put on all this weight and I just feel miserable. I need a new wardrobe. I need new jeans. And he'd be like, well, let's go shopping. And he would, you know, he doesn't really spend much on himself. He's a bodybuilder. He doesn't do his hair, doesn't do his makeup. You know, he's not got expenses. He shops in standard places, buys plain white t-shirts. You know, he's not really a brand whore, you know. So really, he was like, yeah, whatever you need. But for me, I still felt like I was continually asking and just like I was a financial drain, which is why, really similar to you, when I then had my second, that's when I decided to set up my business. And I thought, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. I'd been working for an agency doing what I do now, whilst he was small, because I wanted to make some money, and I made a little bit of money and it was great. So I felt I had a bit of pocket money. I still absolutely wasn't contributing. I'm still not contributing, but I'm wondering how long that's going to last for. Currently it's all beer money for me, but
if it gives you a path towards something, it gives you growth, it gives you your something you're working towards, and actually even if it enables you to have your brunches and buy your clothes without feeling you have to go for it, then I guess that's...
I'm still not a drain. You know, when then I started my business, it quite quickly enabled me to stop taking from the pot of money. And I never ask for money now. And if I, you know, even for the children, you know, I would be, when I'm buying them new sets of clothes, which comes all the time when they're 3 and 1, every week. When I need that, I used to be sort of saying, well, I need a few £100 because we've got to do a big shop to get them some clothes. Now I can just buy that myself and I'm not asking for money in that way. So, you know, I'm definitely less of a drain, but I think it will come down to how your finances are set up as a couple, because, you know, I know with you, David, you split everything. It's all in one pot and you share the money.
Have a joint account. Yeah.
Whereas, so in her instance,
well, my wife does have a savings account.
Okay.
So she does have her own savings account. But I think it's important, and she has her own credit cards as well, because she needs to have her own credit history. And spoiler alert, we're going to do a whole episode talking about finances, because I want you to very quickly give people a teaser of this crazy thing that you've...
Yeah. Well, I thought my finances were split quite normally, the way that we do it. We've got a pot of money we both put in. We used to put 50-50 in. But I know of 2 people who will... who they're married, they live together, it's their joint home, and they split everything down the middle, like everything, like every purchase for the house, every mirror for the wall, every food shop. And when they go food shopping, if she adds things to the basket like shampoo for her hair, she has to add them to a basket at the end.
And they're married?
They're married.
Wow.
And she pays for that separately.
I want to split the toilet roll, because
that's fucking crazy.
You could literally argue like who's actually using the most here, and do we need to 6?
I can hear his argument going, well, I go at the office, and you know, so you've got to pay for that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the people are out there living these wild lives, and I don't think enough people talk about. And I mentioned this friend to someone else.
That becomes to me that's not even about money. That is about that's deeper relationship and team. I keep coming out to team, but I think that's what relationship should be. And I think if you're a real team, then that...
How do people slip into this, though? It's weird. It's like...
I think it's because, I guess, if you're used to doing that as separate individuals, you come together, initially you do it, and then you never form into the... I don't know.
Yeah.
So spoiler alert, that's going to be a whole episode in itself.
We're going to that one.
We're going to dig into that one.
We're going to try and find someone who will actually come and talk about it publicly.
Well,
there must be more.
Yeah, I want to find a few people who have different arrangements. And I think if we could do a show like this with maybe 3 people who each do it differently.
Yeah,
and then we could all talk about, why it works for us. Because this is like, it's how long is a piece of string, right? You could do it any way that works for you. Right. And, maybe you've got people who had a prenup and you've got one person who makes an extreme amount of money and the other one doesn't. And so then you've got some considerations around that. How do you balance that? If you've got like a famous person,
Because you wouldn't ever pay for a coffee, would you?
Exactly.
You'd be like, God, why am I paying for the coffee?
Yes. So there's some of that. But anyway, let's.
But the finances do come into it with the children, because I think that was a big factor actually for me. And I do wonder sometimes, no shade, but if my husband was earning 5 times, 10 times, whatever, I don't know what figure it would have been, that maybe I wouldn't have gone, and maybe I would have never set up a business. Maybe a lot of it for me was about I wanted financial freedom. I don't know that.
But would you still felt can I please have some money for my brunch, even if he's earning 10 times what he's earning? Would you have still felt that you actually wanted to be able to
Maybe
do that for yourself?
Maybe, but then maybe if he earned that much, I would be like, listen, I want a wage, and I would have felt comfortable to say, I want
You just get a
2.5 grand. Yeah, if I had my allowance, then if we were in a financial position that it was more sort of structured, maybe I would have felt like, well, this is my money and I'm just happy. But then, to be honest, I was really, by the time I had my second, and honestly, they were quite close together, and my little boy was 2 and 2 months when she was born. So they were quite close together, and I was just so ready to not be a mum. And as much as that's like sad, like she was 3 months old and I was like desperate to get my brain in gear. I could not cope with mum life anymore. And I'm so happy at how my business has progressed and enabled me to still have a couple of days of the week with my kids. And I still pick them up and drop them off every day.
Quality time that we all talk about, where you're spending time not just being stressed because you've had something else going on, and again, it's different for different people. But for me, I know that makes me a better parent, because then I'm actually spending that time. And it doesn't mean you always have to be doing like a planned activity or anything. Sometimes it could just be like we're hanging out watching a film, or I'm doing the ironing while he's playing with some toys, but we're still together and enjoying that time. And for me, that works. But again, it is just about the.
So if money were no object, what would your arrangement be? What would you like it to be?
I think I would have probably not gone back to work, and probably wouldn't have started. If say there was like absolutely millions, I probably would have not started the business, because I loved having them. And if I was in a position financially that I could have sent them off to preschool a couple of mornings a week, and the money was there to do that, to take the pressure off of the continual being with them, which is really, if I had to have them with me 24/7, 2 of them, I would have definitely started the business and gone back to work. If I was,
do you consider something like, if money was no object, being at home and maybe having a nanny to take some of the load off?
I don't think personally I could handle someone else parenting my children right in front of my eyes. I don't think I could cope, because...
And it's someone else in the house, and let's be honest, it's more judgment.
Passing them off and knowing that, my little girl now goes to a childminder, and she's gone to her since she was like 11 months old. Yeah. She's so happy there. And I know this woman is just so lovely, but I don't want to be there all day watching her mother my children. It would be, I'd feel like, I'll change that nappy, or I'll feed her. I would just be butting in all the time. So I think it would be nice to have them away from you sometimes. But then that said, I think I would have got bored, and I would have probably, for me, I'd have ended up having like I would have been a content creator. If I was a millionaire, and I had this big beautiful house, and my children were at preschool, and I'd be like yummy mummy Tunbridge Wells 2.0, and I'd be like Mumfluencer, that's because
she'd have it on table in the back of Gales.
I'd be like,
she'd have Gales.
Yeah, I would be Gales.
Come and see me.
I'd be one of these mums going, oh, look at the chalkboard for this week. What fun activities? Oh, I've made these beautiful baskets for Easter. That would be me. I'd be making myself busy doing nonsense.
Doing that anyway.
Oh, I have
indeed. What was you did at Christmas? So it was the gingerbread house.
Yeah, I do. That's more for me. That's my own hobby. Today.
Do you have 2 small children?
Well, it's World Book Day today, and my son is wearing his pajamas that are super warm. So we're not really nailing
Ours comes from Amazon every year. It's not, there's no homemade costume.
What about you, Claire?
Pardon?
What about you?
In what respect?
If money were no object,
Money were no
you could
object.
just do whatever. What would be your ideal arrangement?
I mean, I'm not far off having an arrangement I love at the moment. I have the freedom to work my business as I want. It would be nice to take some of the pressure off sometimes of things that we were talking about clients earlier, weren't we? And sometimes there's work or things that might not be exactly what you want to be doing. So it's perhaps to be more choosy or to be more creative because there's more budget for it and to do more things. But in terms of kind of the work-life balance, which is the scope of this, I guess, in terms of parenting and the time that I have for doing my own thing, certainly during term time, that balance is right. When it comes to the very lengthy holidays, it's a bit trickier, and again, that's where it's all about kind of balancing, and that's where it's so great to be able to be in a position where I can just think, okay, well, maybe I just work a bit more during the term time, and so I'm sort of evolving actually the business to a point where I can then maybe step back a bit more. And if money were no object, then I would be like, oh, the month of August, we're going to go and hire an enormous villa in, I don't know, Bali, and just invite all our friends to come over, and then I'll dip in and out and do some
parents together,
parents together and do some nice videos, and
we can bring my kids
and drink cocktails and so all of that stuff. But it's a slightly
dream.
It sounds like the dream. Yeah, okay. That's what we're done this year, right? That's what we're doing.
And it's something that you mentioned in there as well, which is a really good point. I think there's also the preschool, and then the in school, because once the kids are in school, that's a totally different kind of thing, because there is, you've got the school run in the morning, which is the morning nightmare that everybody goes through for like ever. It seems like it never ends. But then, then you have the pickup in the afternoon that you have to manage those two things. But then you have that time during the day to kind of do stuff. So that's a great opportunity to be able to do some work, to do some freelancing, or, to run a small business, or to do whatever you want to do and stay engaged. And I guess it's, I guess maybe I'm thinking about that very bit at the beginning, until they're in school, because that's really when they need kind of full-time care, whether it's you or someone else or a nanny or like whatever, and it's that kind of period.
Yeah, and that can still be sort of hybrided. So, you can, like you do, 2 days at the nursery, or a nice arrangement sometimes is that they do a couple of mornings, 2 or 3 mornings with someone. That's how I started with Jack. There was somebody that we knew that had a great nanny, and it was literally she would just take him for a couple of hours twice a week, and in that time I just started setting things up, and that was good for me, and until he was then 1 and went to nursery, and even that was very much part-time, so, and then built it up as he got older. But yeah, you're right, when they go to school, it can be easier if you've been doing all of the childcare. It can be harder
if you've not,
if you haven't, because then the days are shorter.
For 6 p.m.
Yeah,
and then that's why actually when I chose, my little boy goes to free school, because I just knew if I got into a nice routine of picking them all up at 6 o'clock at night, that was going to really come back to bite me. Yeah. So they're both term time only. They're both in preschool and a childminder, but I pick my little girl up from the childminder just after I get him from preschool. Yeah. And my days are short, but I'm used to that. But now my little boy's going to be starting school in September, and I don't know whether I'll up her hours, or I'll just have some time just with her, or whether she'll get bored with just me because she's a sibling, and when she's at home now, she's got her brother to play with, and I don't really get much work done, but I might do a little bit of work when they're playing together, or when she's napping, which she probably won't be doing by the time he's in school. So, then it's like, oh, do I have her 5 days a week in childcare? Which
sometimes I don't think you can afford to plan it too much, because you have to play it a bit by ear, and it depends on the child and the dynamic. But yes, it can be easier when they go to school. But conversely, for many people I think by the time Jack finished preschool, he was doing maybe 4 days a week, something like that. You did have the option to pick them up sort of 6, even 6:30. I actually didn't, but that option was there. And for many parents, especially that commute, that is an essential option to suddenly go to to 3:30 pickups. Yes, of course, there's after school clubs, but even those don't run as late. So it's much harder.
Who works as a estate agent, she's actually just changed what she was doing, but she was working 6 days a week, every other week, Monday to Saturday. She was leaving her house at 8 in the morning and she was picking him up from the childminder at 6:30 at night, getting home with him for about 5 to 7, putting him in the bath and putting him to bed. And she really felt she never saw him. And that's why she changed her career. And I think, it's all fine to say, "We'll go back to work, we need the money," or whatever. But in those situations, that is heartbreaking. And she had to go back. She had to pay the mortgage. She'd set herself up in a certain way in her life that she was kind of essential to the paying the bills.
And you're stuck there at that point.
Yeah, and it is rubbish for that. And even what they're doing now with the childcare, you're going to have from September this year, 30 hours for anyone 9 months and above. But that's term time only. So if you're spreading that across the year, it's 22 and a half hours a week, which isn't enough. That's
and it definitely does. I think we were saying this before we went on record, but it definitely, when this all sort of came about, was thinking, it's 22 hours. It doesn't actually work out like that, because then the she's working out.
Yeah, they just
slightly differently.
They don't let them be funded hours if it's lunchtime. I don't understand that, but you have to pay a lunch hour fee.
And then there's like the sundries and stuff out of it. So it basically, the way I initially calculated it was like, it's going to mean that this many hours reduced my bill. It doesn't quite work out.
And not all the nurseries can afford it. My boys' preschool can't afford to do the 30 hours.
Many childminders can't, because there's a lot of process around it as well, which I believe makes it quite difficult for smaller.
So it reduces the bill, but
is it moving in the right direction? Absolutely, especially coupled with the increased flexible working. So I think we're heading in the right direction. But I think the big change needs to come from where we started this, which is that just society and choices and just everybody making the choice that's right for them, and the just the lack of the removal of the judgment, because every family is very, very different and will have their own reasons and dynamics. And
some people don't have a choice.
Yeah, and I think that's the sad bit when they don't have the choice, because if you've bought your house, especially, we are very kind of London focused here, and I know that, people think it's wild, but I've got friends who are earning just over the 100 grand a year threshold, which means you get no help with childcare. If one parent is earning over 100 grand a year, you don't get any help, not even the tax-free allowance.
Whereas two parents could be earning 80 and you would.
Yeah. And I understand that's a London problem, but if your mortgage is 2.5 grand a month and one of you's earning 100 grand a year and you're taking home about 5 grand and the other one's earning 25 grand a year in an admin job, there is literally zero point in them going back to work, because you are getting absolutely nothing. God forbid you had twins. God forbid you had 2 children. God forbid you had 3 children. It's thousands, especially our childcare here is thousands a month. It's not, in London, I know we are more expensive, and even where we are, a bit further out of London, but we're still paying London prices, and mortgages are £2,000 for a family home. It's not going to cost you 800 quid anymore.
So that's a really interesting point that we really hadn't touched on, which is when you have more than one. This is almost a whole conversation about what if you just have one, right? Once you start having 2 or 3, then the whole financial model gets blown out of the water, because it's so expensive to try and do that. Like the offset of doing that, you're way better staying home with them if you can, because there is no other option.
I have friends who aren't having a second child because they can't afford it. And one of them's earning about £130,000 a year. The other one's earning about 80 grand a year. How the hell is that life? Because they've got a big-ish mortgage. They pay a couple of grand a month on their mortgage, the bills for the big-ish, and it's not a mansion. It's a large semi with a drive, But in Southeast London, that's what we're paying.
That's a lot,
it's a big mortgage for them. And, just from their bills to commute, their bills for nursery for the one child, the costs of having another one, they're thinking, well, I think realistically, luckily their child is born so that they'll go to school when they're 4. So they're thinking, well, if we do want a second, we'd have to wait until she's in school. And that's just nuts.
It's make that choice based on that.
And you don't know how your fertility is going to be then. Like, that's a whole nother ball game, and
that's a whole nother.
It's sad that you have to make these. And to be fair, I always said to my husband, I'm not ever going to let money stop me from having children. And when we talked about a third, that I'm pretty sure now I don't want a third, but I said at the time, if I want one, I'm having one. I'm not going to say I can't afford a baby.
Because you can never afford one.
No.
Let's just make that really clear.
Never the
no
right
matter how
time.
much money you make,
Never enough money.
it's it's never the right time, and you can never afford it.
No.
Even Michael Jackson had kids and then went bankrupt.
Yeah.
He like filed for bankruptcy after having kids. It like no one can afford it.
Yeah.
So just get on.
Yeah.
And again, this is another topic on my list that I started with, which was, in my opinion, if you want to have kids, have them get married as early as possible and have them as young as possible. Because
But what if you married the wrong person?
I know, but I'm just saying in general,
If you could.
if all things being again ideal, get married young and have them young, because it's so much easier to take care of them, to do all the stuff, the sleepless nights, all that sort of stuff is so much easier the younger you are.
It's true, but like,
as you get older,
I didn't have my son when I was 40, which, I believe I was coined geriatric parent at the hospital. I was like, wow. Actually,
you're walking sick.
they put you in a special ward.
Jack, he was 2 weeks early, which meant he was technically born 2 days before my 40th, which I've always been grateful for. So I can actually say I had him in my 30s. But obviously, societally, that was quite late. But that's because prior to that, it's not because I was some kind of like a big career, I'm all about it. It's
Daddy Warbucks.
It's just that I hadn't met the right person. I hadn't, my life was very much distracted in other areas. And for me to just, had the opportunity arisen much younger, I can't tell you what my choices would have been, but it's very difficult to, you'd almost have to plan that kind of in your teens. I'm going to meet someone by my early 20s, because what you say to me makes complete sense. Then by the time your kids have kind of grown up, you still have so much.
So then you could be a grandparent. You could be a grandparent at 45.
You could be,
and you have to start all over again.
Start all over
I don't
again.
think so.
I had a friend that was a grandparent at 36.
It's disgusting. That's disgusting. But I was
But also being a parent at 36.
I know, which was mad. And he was this Dutch guy, lovely, lovely guy. But yeah, I mean, they had their kids when they were teenagers. He was 16 when they had their first kid, and then their kid obviously was 16 when they had theirs. And so we used to just take the piss out of him all the time.
With having kids later, I think, is that you've got so set in your own ways, and this is how I do things, and this is my time, that actually that transition to suddenly having to prioritize somebody else above everything is I think way harder than if you've only had a few years of it because you only just left home. See, I'm not suggesting 16-year-olds need to go and be doing it.
No.
But yeah, that's the
Most of my friends at 30, and one friend had her children at 21, but the problem that she had, no one else had children. We didn't actually really care, to be honest. We barely saw her children, we barely saw her, and she was probably going through real postpartum depression because no one really cared. We were 21, I was going out. Other people were at uni, people weren't interested. I was 30 and I was the first, but they quickly caught up with me. I was just about...
It sort of happens as soon as one or two started. Sort of spread,
So I think 30 was the answer for my life. Because then you go, well, might as well just get on with it. And that's why then I had the second. And they all started having a second.
Having children to cancer.
Or is that though? But there's a lot of parallels.
Spreads like wildfire.
Yeah, there is a lot of parallels.
Wildfire, that's better.
But and once you've kind of got one, then you have another one, because
why not?
Like, it isn't that hard to go from 1 to 2, to be honest. Like, my second is just like the easiest child. Like, I'm just like,
where are you?
Stop crying. What's wrong? Whereas with my boy, I was like, he's crying. He must be. Can he breathe? Whereas with her, I'm
definitely
like,
imagine
she's all right.
I only have one, but I can imagine that the second, you just know what you're doing. And when I look back at this sort of, I remember when he was born, I was like, how am I going to shower? And then I would take the monitor into the shower and have literally a 30-second.
Isn't it?
Whereas now I'd be like, well,
she's
I'm
crying.
sure,
He's all right.
he'd be fine.
Yeah, I just used to just leave her in the bouncer. I'd put the bouncer in the door, and she would be screaming her head off, and I'd be handing her. I'd be like, lather it up. Listen, hon, I've got to wash my hair. She'd just be screaming. And I think, hon, it's going to explode.
And it gets, the more there are, the worse that gets.
Yeah.
And after I've talked to people who have, like my wife is 5th out of 7.
Yeah.
And you talk to her parents, and they're like, yeah, by about the 4th one, you're just kind of like, they'll be fine.
I hope that one looks.
And the other ones will look after that a little bit, and and you just kind of like, are they dead? No, they're okay.
Oh, they are. They seem to be breathing.
And they like, they did the thing, and I saw I saw an Instagram post about this. Someone was talking about, they're like, oh, how I have trouble getting my kids to bed and whatever. And I don't know what to do. And they're like, just go to bed.
Yeah.
Like, leave them.
That's what I do.
And they were like, what?
Second, I shut the door.
Leave them.
And I say, go to bed. And when my little boy now at 3 says things to me like, but mummy, I say, listen, it's bedtime. I'll turn the light off. I love you very much. Good night. And he's like, but I want, sorry, goodbye. And I just leave the room. I haven't got time for this anymore.
Yeah.
Like, whereas I used to kind of like, oh, bless him.
But see, you
hate it.
So you feel a little bit to me like the old school parent, which is
definitely am.
Children revolve around the parents. Parents don't revolve around the children. And again, that's a whole nother thing we could dig into. That's a whole nother hour discussion. But I think at some point, somewhere between, I don't know, the 80s and maybe early 90s to now, it very much seems to me that a lot of parents, like, they just revolve their lives around the kids. Whereas when I grew up, if my mom wanted to go out, I went with her. And if she wanted to go out and have drinks with her friends, then she went to the bar and I was in the pub and I would fall asleep, but it does some, but not nearly as much. So you get all these.
I have friends who have children the same age as my son, who's 3, who have still not yet been out of an evening because their child needs them to soothe them to sleep at bedtime. Often they wake up in the start about 9 or 10 o'clock. So they have not for one day been out of an evening with.
And actually, what happens is, the child is probably going to cry in that, but if you leave them a couple of times, they've then learned mum comes
not alone.
Exactly.
They're not alone.
Comes back.
Someone's at home. There's an adult at home.
Giving them the opportunity to learn that you come back for them.
We're not actually just leaving them completely on their own. I'm suggesting maybe with their father. Someone else responsible.
Some human.
Yeah.
Adult.
Not the 4-year-old.
No, I'm not going. You'll be all right in there, won't you? Yeah.
That's the third or fourth one.
That's the third or fourth. Yes.
It's like,
lock the doors. Don't answer to anyone.
it'll be fine. If I just lock them in the house, I'm sure they can't get into too much trouble. They'll be all right. You're only going to be gone for 3 hours. Brilliant.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for your time. I think that was just a fun chat in the end.
For sure.
We could, I'm sure we could continue to chat for another hour or so, but I'm conscious you've got actual work today. So we can't sit around and just chat all day. But thank you very much for your time.
It's been fun.
And this will be out Saturday, so I'll put it out Saturday morning.
Amazing.
And it'll be around. And then maybe we'll come back another time and talk about finances, because I think the finances discussion, I do think that warrants its own discussion. Yeah. And if we can find a couple of people that do it in different ways, I think that would be interesting as well. Not just for women, but for men and women. I think for couples, and if we can find. Well, I'll ask around if we can.
Single parent perspective on it, because that brings a whole new dimension to it.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
That's a different ball game when there isn't a team.
Yeah.
So
Well, there's one account. That's it.
Well, we just have one account. Me, myself, and I.
It makes it much easier.
Me and my son have one account.
Yeah. But it is mad. I can't believe it. And when I said that I knew someone that did this, they said to me, oh yeah, my mother and father-in-law do exactly the same thing. And I'm like, what? These people in their 70s doing this, who are really splitting everything. They go to Sainsbury's.
To be fair, if they're in the 70s still married, maybe it's worked for them. So
this is the thing. Hey. So who are we to say it doesn't work? But I think no one teaches you this. Me and my husband, when we bought our house, we both earned the same money. We set up a joint account. We put in the same amount. We paid our mortgage, but that was our only thing that was a problem, so we knew what the mortgage was. And as time went over, we thought, okay, look, let's put the food bill in that account. Let's put the gas, the electric, let's put all that in. Let's work out how much it costs and then put the same in each. Then he quickly overtook me financially. And I was like, listen, Buck, I've got no money at the end of the month because I'm paying all these bills. And you're sitting there going, I'm going to put £1,000 in my eyes.
Then split it, then you can do it as percentage.
So that's what we then did. Then I said, okay, listen, I'm like struggling to afford my brunch money and you're putting it all in your savings. I think you should pay more. And he was like, okay, fair enough. Yeah. So then he put in like 70% or something and I put in like 30%, which was lovely. And then, then when we had children, it was like, okay, so you're going to cover all of this? Because I've got nothing.
Yeah. And there's another interesting wrinkle that my wife and I are going through at the minute, which is actually she's earning a lot more than I am because I'm messing around with this company trying to get it off the ground.
You're drinking coffee.
Since I'm sitting around
talking about how to make money.
And talking about how to make money with the ladies. So she's feeling the pressure massively now, which is a really interesting sort of, in our relationship, that's a total 180.
Probably quite a flip side of the dynamic, isn't it?
And she feels a lot of pressure on herself because she's like, well, for, 15, 16 years, you were pretty much the only person bringing any money in.
John, is that my husband felt huge pressure financially when I was at home with the children, and I felt huge pressure emotionally of looking after his needs.
Yeah.
And I would be going, you don't understand how hard my day has been. He has been awful. He has been crying. He wouldn't nap. He's got this, he's got that.
Yeah.
He'd be sick. He'd be poorly. I'd be stressed. I'd be worrying about his jabs, worrying about, I had to worry about everything in the household, which was a big burden.
Yeah.
But he felt all this financial pressure, and he then would snap and say, if I lose my job, we've got nothing. I've got to work hard. I've got to spend time in the office. I can't just...
There are definitely two sides to it. And I think that teamwork and communication, which can fall down when you've got the sleepless nights, the new child and all that, it kind of needs to be done beforehand.
Yeah.
Certainly with my partner, we didn't do any of that discussion of how is this actually going to work financially, practically, emotionally. And I think that's where it all breaks down, because there are two actually very good arguments, but I think under the pressure, you can't see those. You can only see where you're at.
Yeah. And this gets back to the very original bit, which is, I think what happens is that people discount the emotional cost versus the financial cost. So you're absolutely right. Generally, traditionally, men go out, they provide, they're bringing in the money, they provide for the family, women are taking care of it during the day. And I think, again, societally, I think people recognize the financial pressure to provide, but they don't appreciate fully the other side of that equation from whoever stays home.
Their emotional needs, they're changing, they're learning, they're learning to walk, they're learning to talk, and they've got a lot of feelings at that time, and it's hard.
Which frankly is why women should do that, in my opinion, again. But
because we're nurturers.
You're nurturers, and you're the emotional side. Some men will be.
My household too.
Some men will be. Yeah. Some okay, I get it.
I think that there'll be some and some.
But generally speaking, though, and this is why I also think, and I'm very traditional, and don't yell at me, Gray.
I'm not going to yell at you, but I'm just going to let you know that I have got a...
I know you do, and we've gone on, I know you do. But I think it's important to have both parents involved, because men and women are equal, but they're different. And what we teach our kids are different things.
Yeah.
And women are the emotional side. That's where the children get the emotion, the empathy, all that sort of stuff, a lot of the communication, because women are generally better at that than men. And men teach a different, maybe the resilience and some other stuff, and maybe some assertiveness and other things that they don't get from maybe traditionally women. Everyone's going to kill me in the comments, but I'm
going to semi-agree with the point, and it doesn't necessarily need to be men and women, but I think the two dynamics that parents can ideally bring is that you're going to get, because regardless if it's man, woman, 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 man, man, whatever, they're going to be slightly different to each other because they're different people. Yep. You're going to get the one that's maybe a bit over-nurtured. She's like, oh, you've hurt your knee. And you're going to be the one who's maybe more like, heal it. And that's what you need. You need that balance. And I think that balance is important. So I do agree with you to an extent. I think maybe we just don't necessarily need to gender stereotype, although I agree with you that there are some we can generalize a bit.
Again,
but there will be some people that fall outside of the box.
Well, that's a whole nother topic, because there's some really interesting research on that as well. So there is some actual data on the results of parents, single parents, dual parents, single sex parenting, right? And stuff like that. And there's been long-term studies now about the results and what that means for children down the line and stuff like that. So there's some really interesting research to talk about that. But again, we don't have time for that.
This is a whole new podcast and that's out.
Yeah,
I know.
We've now...
but
we've had 3 episodes.
Thing just on what you were saying before about all of the emotional things that you were feeling, and most of the things you said were related to kind of the upbringing of the child, but potentially there's a layer there also that I don't think there's many women that have had kids that haven't gone through this of where have I gone?
Yeah.
And that's maybe sitting beneath all of the practical stuff, but there's that emotional of like, especially if there isn't this kind of value given to looking after kids of who am I now? Where's my worth? What have I become? And you become Jack's mum or or Vinny's mum. You completely lose your identity, and I think that is that can be really
Yeah,
huge.
and that weighs really heavy. Day to day, you'd feel like I've not even washed my hair, I've not brushed my teeth, I have just been a slave to these children, and then you've finished work and you're tired.
Well, I think we've already agreed that wasn't us because we were washing our hair while they cried. But
Only with the second one.
some.
The first one, I would be going, he'd be attached to me. I was running around the house with him in a sling all bloody day.
I'm painting my nails.
Well, the second one, she is just fine. She's just, I don't know what she's doing most of the time. Busy, probably painting on the walls.
Fine.
Doing
Lost to her.
she's doing some on social media.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
She's super smart, probably because I've just let her learn. I just talk to her like she's an adult, and she talks
Exactly.
back to me like an adult now.
There you go.
good luck with that.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right,
You already
cheers.
said goodbye, but
Yeah.
goodbye again.
Goodbye
Bye again.
again.
See ya.
And you could have this back. You remain unscathed.